My husband's missing sister showed up and told me the truth about him. Asterisco asterisco. When I opened the door that evening, I was expecting a delivery, not a ghost. It was raining, that thin, cold kind of drizzle that soaked through your clothes and followed you indoors. The woman standing on my porch looked like she'd been caught in it for a while. Her hair clung to her neck, and her brown eyes darted from my face to the house behind me like she was afraid I'd shut the door. "Are you Clara?" she asked. Her voice shook. "Yes," I said slowly. "Can I help you?" Her lips trembled before the words came out. "I'm Julia. Daniel's sister." For a second, I didn't know how to respond. "My husband's sister." That was impossible. Daniel had told me years ago that Julia was gone, that she'd vanished when they were teenagers. It was one of those scars from his past he never wanted to touch again. I used to feel sorry for him because of it. But standing there, staring at the woman whose name had been a ghost in our home, I felt a chill crawl up my spine. I let her in because, how could I not? She looked like she'd walked through a storm, maybe in more ways than one. Asterisco asterisco asterisco. Our house smelled faintly of cinnamon that night. I'd been baking muffins for Daniel to take to work the next day. Julia glanced around the kitchen, dripping rainwater onto the chili. Her eyes fell on a framed photo sitting by our dining table. Daniel, me, and our small garden in the background. He had his arm around me, that familiar, warm smile on his face. She stared at it longer than she should have. Then she whispered, almost to herself, "He looks the same." I made tea because I didn't know what else to do, a polite reflex. And maybe because I needed something to fill the silence between us. As she wrapped her hands around the mug, I noticed small scars on her wrists, the kind that told stories of rough years she didn't owe me an explanation for. Her eyes were red, not just from the rain. "Julia," I finally said. "Daniel told me you disappeared. Years ago. He said no one ever found." "I know what he told you," she interrupted, her eyes sharp for a second. Then softer. "But that was a lie." My throat tightened. The way she said it, measured, tired, certain. There was no hesitation. Before I could ask anything else, I heard the familiar click of Daniel's car pulling into the driveway. Daniel rarely came home early, especially on a Thursday. But that night, it was as if fate wanted everything to collide at once. His keys jingled, the door opened, and I heard his usual call. "Clara? You home?" Then footsteps, quick, confident. The sound stopped midway when his eyes met Julia's. The way his face drained of color told me everything I didn't want to know. "Julia," he breathed. The name hung in the air like smoke. She didn't smile. "Hello, Danny." My knees went weak. He'd never flinched like that, not even when we'd fought. There was terror in his eyes. Not grief, not shock. Terror. What are you doing here?" he stammered. "I could ask you the same," she said. The silence after that was unbearable. I looked from one to the other, two people I knew and didn't know at all. They shared the same eyes, the same shape of jaw, but something else connected them that I couldn't see yet. I whispered, "Daniel, I think you need to explain." He rubbed his hands down his face, the way he did when trying to stall for time. "It's complicated, Clara. You shouldn't have come here, Julia." Julia gave a harsh little laugh, one that sounded like it hurt her throat. "What was I supposed to do? Keep running while you live this perfect life? You think lies stay buried forever?" I felt my heart race. "Running?" I echoed. "What do you mean, running?" Neither of them answered me. Just silence and that ticking sound from the kitchen clock, mocking my confusion. Finally, Julia looked at me. "You deserve to know who your husband really is." "But I didn't come here to ruin anything, Clara. I came because he already ruined everything." That night marked the beginning of the storm. When Daniel finally broke his silence, it wasn't with an explanation, it was with panic. "She's unstable," he insisted after Julia left that night. "You shouldn't listen to her. You have no idea what she's capable of." I watched him pace across the living room, his hands trembling just slightly, his voice cracking at the edges. I'd lived with this man for 12 years. I knew his rhythms, how his voice softened when he lied, how his eyes never met mine when he wasn't telling the whole truth. He was doing both. Later that night, when he finally fell asleep, I sat by the kitchen window. The rain had stopped, but puddles reflected the yellow porch light like small amber pools. My mind kept replaying Julia's voice. Asterisk, he already ruined everything. Asterisk. The words didn't sound like anger, they sounded like grief. The next morning, I drove to work as usual, but my mind wasn't there. I couldn't let go of the feeling that something had cracked in the foundation of my marriage. Daniel texted me around noon. Asterisk, let's forget yesterday. Don't reach out to her. She's dangerous. Asterisk. Dangerous. The word lingered like a bad taste. I stared at the message, my stomach twisting. He didn't ask if I was okay. He didn't say he loved me, or that things would make sense soon. Just that she was dangerous. That afternoon, when my shift ended, I sat in the parking lot and scrolled through my phone. Old photos, all those trips, all those smiles. Funny how love blinds you to detail. He always avoided talking about family, brushing off questions with practiced lines. My parents are gone. Julia too. E don't like to relive the past. Back then, I thought it was trauma. Now, I wondered if it was guilt. So I searched Julia M. and his family's last name. It felt wrong, but I had to know. It took only minutes before I found something that made my hands go cold. An old news article from 20 years ago. Local teenager escapes family home after alleged incident. Brother questioned, released. The article didn't say much. Just that a young girl, Julia M., had vanished after accusing her older brother, Daniel M., of something unlawful and unprovable. The details sealed by family privacy requests. She had been missing for nearly a decade before police closed the case. I turned off my phone. The air in the car felt too thin. The man who slept beside me every night, had he once been accused of something unspeakable? And now, the sister he claimed was missing, was standing in my kitchen. I couldn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Julia's pale face in the doorway and Daniel's expression, not shock, but fear. The kind of fear that makes you realize there's a truth you were never meant to find. When I finally drifted off, I dreamed of a house with locked rooms and voices behind the doors. In the morning, sunlight spilled through the curtains, but it did nothing to warm the ache in my chest. Daniel was gone before I woke. No note, no message. Just the faint smell of his cologne, lingering like a ghost under the hum of the air conditioner. I told myself I was being paranoid. People have family disputes all the time. But deep down, I knew we had crossed into darker territory. The article replayed in my head, the words unlawful and unprovable echoing like a warning bell. I picked up my phone and dialed the number Julia had scribbled on a napkin before she left. My hand trembled. She answered after 2 rings. Clara. Her voice was soft but steady. I need to talk, I said. Not here. Somewhere private. There was a pause, then she said, there's a cafe off Maple Street, behind the library. Meet me there in an hour. I didn't tell Daniel. The cafe was half empty, filled with the smell of espresso and the sound of old jazz playing through worn speakers. Julia sat near the window, a scarf pulled over her head. She looked smaller in the daylight, fragile but composed. I sat across from her, and for a long while, we didn't speak. It was Julia who finally broke the silence. He told you I ran away, didn't he? I nodded. She sighed. That's what he wanted everyone to believe. For a long time, even I did. Her fingers toyed with a sugar packet. She didn't look at me as she spoke, just stared out the window as if the past was sitting there waiting for her. When we were kids, Daniel wasn't like the man you know now, she said quietly. He was controlling, protective, sometimes cruel. After our mother died, he said it was his job to keep me safe. But his idea of safety, she trailed off. It wasn't love, Clara. It was ownership. The words hung in the space between us. My stomach turned. I tried to leave once. Told him I wanted to live with an aunt in Seattle. He lost te encontro. Things were said, things were done, and after that, I was gone. I took the first bus I could find. I didn't think he'd ever admit what happened. She finally looked at me then, and the pain in her eyes was unbearable. It took me years to rebuild. I lived under a different name. I thought I'd moved on, until I saw a photo of him online. Your anniversary post. That smile, she shook her head. He hasn't changed. Asterisco asterisco asterisco. I wanted to protest. Daniel could be stubborn, yes, distant at times, but cruel? Controlling. The man who left me love notes and made me soup when I was sick? He's not like that anymore, I said weakly, though even as the words left my mouth, I wasn't sure I believed them. Julia gave me a look full of pitch. You think abusers always look like predators? They don't. They learn to change shape. Stare down at my cap, my breath quick and unravel. I don't want to destroy your life, she said. I came because you need to know who he really is, and because he needs to know I'm not afraid anymore. She slid a folded envelope across the table. My name was written on it in careful handwriting. Read it when you're ready, she said. And be careful. He's lied before. Asterisco asterisco asterisco. I didn't open it right away. At home, Daniel acted like nothing had happened. He greeted me with a smile, asked if I wanted to go out for dinner. But under that calm exterior, I could feel the tension simmering. His eyes followed me too long, his hands gripped things tighter than they should have. At one point, I caught him looking at my phone on the kitchen island. He quickly looked away, pretending to check the time. That night, I locked the bathroom door and sat on the edge of the tub with Julia's envelope in my hands. Inside was a single page, a letter, in her voice. She wrote about the night she left home, about the screaming, the bruises, the humiliation, about how Daniel had called her a liar when she tried to tell their father, about how shame had silenced her for 20 years. And then there was a line at the bottom that made my heart stop. He told me no one would ever believe me, because he could make anyone love him if he wanted to. I don't know how long I sat there. Maybe an hour, maybe longer. My hands shook so badly I dropped the letter twice. When I came out, Daniel was standing by the doorway. You went to see her, he said quietly. The anger behind his calm voice sent shivers up my spine. Asterisco asterisco asterisco. I needed the truth, I said, trying to stand tall. His eyes darkened. You let a stranger poison your head against me. Clara, you have no idea what she's capable of. She's your sister. I snapped. You told me she ran away. You said she was dead. He slammed his hand against the wall, hard. I flinched. She is dead to me, he growled. You don't know the things she did, the lies she spread. Something cracked inside me then. It wasn't fear, it was certainty. People who tell the truth don't need to shout to sound believable. He saw it in my face, that flicker of doubt, and maybe the beginning of defiance. Clara, he said, his voice softening suddenly. Don't let her ruin us. She wants to destroy what we have. I looked at him, and for the first time, I saw a stranger wearing my husband's face. I think what we had, I said slowly, was built on lies. His jaw clenched. For a moment, I thought he might lash out again. Instead, he turned away, muttering, You'll regret this. You'll see what she really is. He left the house that night. I didn't ask where he was going. But I wasn't the only one he visited. Because the next morning, Julia called. Her voice was shaking. Clara, did you tell him where I live? No, I said quickly. Why? I think he found me anyway. Her next words made my blood run cold. My car tires were slashed last night. I remember gripping the phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. Julia, you need to go to the police, I whispered. She'll algued bitterly. And tell them what? That my brother, the man with no record and a perfect reputation, might have slashed my tires? They think I'm paranoid. Then come here, I said. It's safer. You can stay in the guest room until things calm down. There was silence on the line before she said softly, Clara, if he finds me with you, he'll take it out on you too. Her words planted a cold seed of fear in my chest. But fear or not, I couldn't let her face him alone. Julia, he's my husband, I said, my voice trembling. If he's done something wrong, then I need to see it for myself. She sighed. You will. You just don't know it yet. Asterisco asterisco asterisco. That evening, the house felt heavier than usual. Daniel estiu até come home. His phone went straight to voicemail. I found myself pacing the hallway, checking the windows, listening for his car. At around 9 p.m., there was a knock on the door. E froze, my heart tudinho. But when I opened it, Julia stood there, clutching a small travel bag and looking exhausted. I didn't know where else to go, she murmured. Every sound outside made me feel like he was there. I helped her inside and locked the door behind us. We sat at the kitchen table again, the same spot where all of this had started. The only light came from the small lamp by the counter. She looked up at me, her face pale and damp from the rain. You don't have to believe me, Clara. But if you want proof of what Daniel is capable of, there's a box you need to see. What box? I asked. His father's old trunk, she said. He keeps it in the shed behind the house. It used to be full of photos and letters from our childhood. The last time I saw it, it wasn't. Asterisco, asterisco, asterisco. After she went to bed, I couldn't stop thinking about that box. The rain had started again, a steady drumming against the windows. Every gust of wind made the porch creak. Around midnight, I slipped on my coat and walked out behind the house. The shed stood in the dark corner of the yard, its door padlocked but rusted enough to break with a little force. I hesitated for a moment, then used a gardening spade to pry it open. The smell hit me first, damp wood and old paper. Inside, there were boxes stacked carelessly, an old bike, a broken mirror. And then at the very back, the trunk Julia had described, battered, brown, with DM carved faintly into the lid. My hands quase lifted it open. Inside were folders, old letters, bundles of cash bound with elastic bands, a tarnished necklace, and a thick envelope labeled, private. I pulled it out. Inside were photographs, Polaroids. One by one, I flipped through them, and my chest tightened with every image. They weren't ordinary family pictures. They were cruel. Daniel as a boy, smirking next to a much younger Julia who looked terrified. Another with bruises faintly visible on her arms. One with their father sitting beside them, smiling faintly, and his hand gripping Daniel's shoulder far too tightly. And at the bottom of the stack was something worse. A photo of Julia, bruised and crying, holding a suitcase, standing outside what must have been that very same shed. The date on the back was the day she disappeared. There was another envelope beneath it. Inside was a police report, folded neatly. Daniel's name was listed, along with a handwritten note, asterisk case closed due to lack of evidence. Family refused to cooperate. Asterisco. Isation de cor de flor, mai breve neve. That was the truth. It had been there all along, buried behind our home. Asterisco, asterisco, asterisco. When I finally went back inside, Julia was sitting at the kitchen table. She didn't look surprised to see the envelope in my hand. You found it, she said softly. I nodded, tears stinging my eyes. Why didn't anyone believe you? Because he changed after that, she said. He learned how to charm people, how to hide. My father drove me away to keep the family name clean. I left, and Daniel got his new life. He was the perfect son, the loving husband, the good man. But all he ever does is erase proof that contradicts him. Her voice broke. I thought maybe he forgot me. But then, he started sending messages 2 months ago. My breath caught. Messages! Julia reached into her bag and slid out her phone. The texts were short, cruel messages from an unknown number. Asterisk, you should have stayed gone. Asterisk and asterisk, no one will believe you twice. Asterisk. The latest one was from last night. Asterisk, you made me do this. Asterisk. He used a different phone, she whispered. He's clever like that. At that exact moment, headlights flashed across the window. Both of us turned toward the noise. Julia's face drained of color. Clara, that's his car. I stood frozen, clutching the counter. Daniel walked up the steps slowly, holding his keys, drenched from the rain. He looked calm, too calm. When he stepped inside, his eyes immediately found Julia. Well, he said flatly, I guess this saves me another trip. Daniel, I said, my voice trembling, we need to talk. He looked at me like he already knew what I'd found. You went through my things. I found the photos, Daniel, I said. The police report. The letters. What you did. He laughed, a sharp, humorless sound. You think you understand anything? Julia stood behind me, clutching her jacket. You haven't changed a bit, she spat, still blaming everyone else. For the first time, I saw the real Daniel surface, the mask slipping, his jaw tightening, his voice guttural and cold. You ruined this family, Julia, he snapped. And now you're trying to ruin my marriage too. He turned to me, his eyes suddenly pleading. She's manipulating you, Clara. Don't throw away everything we built because of her lies. But the words rang hollow now. I'd seen enough lies to fill a lifetime. I straightened my shoulders. Get out, Daniel. He froze, staring at me in disbelief. Clara. I said get out, I repeated, louder this time. He hesitated, looking from me to Julia and back again. Then his expression changed, a slow, dangerous calm. You'll regret this, he whispered. Both of you. And then he turned and walked out into the rain. Julia sank into the chair behind her, shaking. You don't understand what he's capable of, she murmured. I do now, I said. And I won't let him hurt you again. But as I closed the front door that night and slid the lock into place, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't over. Because men like Daniel didn't disappear quietly. They waited. And I could feel, somewhere deep down, he was already planning his next move.